Hey everyone, Mr. Kaczynski here, getting into the congruence part of section P called Transformations and Congruence in IXL's 8th grade math skills. So congruent statements and corresponding parts today. Actually, every transformation that we've done so far is translations, reflections, rotations, they've all produced congruent figures. So this is appropriate to do with that. All right, so right here we're identifying corresponding parts. Corresponding parts. That is, parts that are the same size or the same measure when we put this shape on top of the other one. So if we translated and rotated this shape over to this one, which ones would be the same? So angle S is congruent to angle U. Let's see. S is 72. U is 72. So that one, check. That is true. Let's just check all that apply. So let's check all of them. Angle P is congruent to angle X. Angle P is 45. Angle X is 45. Yeah. That's pretty obvious that those correspond. Line RQ or segment RQ is congruent to segment VW. RQ has a measure of 18 and VW has a measure of 18. So yep, those are corresponding points. And lastly, PS, which is right here and has a measure of 44, is that congruent to XU right here? That has a measure of 44. Yes, it is. So in this case, all of those are corresponding. So we'd have to check all four of them. There's more, obviously, but those are the ones that are given to us. All right, corresponding parts of these triangles. So in this case, we're not given the measures of the angles, but we're given these lines that tell us that, for instance, angle Q is congruent to angle I. All right, so let's go over here and check this one right off the bat. Angle K and angle Q. Angle K has these two marks, and angle Q has only one mark. So those are not congruent to each other. They're not corresponding. All right, we'll just keep working backwards here. JI, segment JI, which has a length of 30 yards, and SQ, which has a length of 30 yards. Yep, those are corresponding. KJ, which has a length of 19, is that congruent to SJ? SQ, rather. That was this one. So no, definitely not the case. And we'll check IK, which has a length of 27. Is that congruent to RS, which has a length of 19? And it's not, so actually I'm not going to even leave that line there because it doesn't make sense to. So just that one is corresponding in this case. Then we get to this one, and these two triangles don't have any measures given to us, but they are all implied. For instance, this one mark and this one mark tells us that those two segments are congruent to each other, similar to the angle measures. All right, so let's go through these. CD, which has the one mark on it, is that congruent to WX, which also has the one mark on it? Yes, it is. All right, CE, which has the three marks on them, 1, 2, 3, and WY, which has the three marks on them. So that tells us that they are indeed congruent. Angle E, which is the right angle, and angle X, which is not a right angle. Okay, well, I'm going to take away that little red mark because these are not congruent. And then lastly, angle D, which has one angle mark on it, and angle X, which has one angle mark on it. Those are. Then we get into just congruent statements. So this right here is called a congruence statement. All right, so we can tell a lot about these two triangles just by looking at the congruence statement. We know that angle L is congruent to angle S, angle M is congruent to angle T, and angle K is congruent to angle R. We also know that, for instance, segment MK is congruent to segment TR. All right, so let's look at these. Is KL congruent to RS? RS. Yes, it is. All right, what about, and I'm going to erase those actually. What about angle L and angle R? Angle L and angle R, since they're not in the same place in the congruence statement, they are not congruent to each other. They're not corresponding. Angle M and T, angle M and angle T, they're both in the middle. That means they're corresponding. And lastly, KM and RT. KM and RT. Yep, those are in the same place in the congruence statement. That makes them corresponding to one another. It's almost easier without the shape, I think. So we're going to do one more without the shape. A couple of quadrilaterals. ORQP is congruent to WXYV. All right, so P and V are at the same spot in the congruence statement. So those are corresponding to each other. Q and Y. Q is the third one, Y is the third one. Those are corresponding to each other. R and X, those are both the second angles, so those are corresponding to each other. And lastly, P and Y. Nope, not the case, because P is the fourth point listed and Y is the third point listed, so those are not corresponding to each other. And just for clarification, we can say stuff like OR, segment OR, is congruent to segment Y or WX. Or we could say, let's grab one more here, segment RQ is congruent to segment XY. Okay, and we could go on and list a few more, but I think you're going to get the point, and I think you're going to fly through and get a smart score of 100 on skill, I believe it's skill 13. It's LPP if you use the special code in section P of IXL's 8th grade math. Good luck. You're going to do it.